Plants, the green frontier. These are the discussions of the podcast Horticult. Its continuing mission to talk about strange new cultivars, to seek out new flowers and plant them, to boldly garden like no one has before. Hey, this is Blaine from the Horticult. What's up, everybody? How y'all doing? So on this episode, we go over October gardening tips from the USU Extension website. We go over things you do with trees, things you do with garden beds, things you do with vegetable gardens, all these different things we do right now in October, things we can get ready for spring, things we can wrap it up for winter. Don't forget, hey, we do a live podcast on the YouTube. Come find us there and share and like, subscribe. Buddies, thanks so much, podlings, for listening, and let's get it on. Hey, this is Blade.
Hey, yo, this is B-Rad.
And we are the Horticult. Thanks for coming along for the ride. On this episode of the podcast, we are going to discuss something very pertinent in this time of year. We're going to call it October Gardening Tips.
Very good, very good.
And this is actually straight from the USU Extension website. And you can find all the stuff there. I kind of put it in my own words, took it off their website. And so if you wanted to go find this, you can go to garden.usu.edu and you can find these. They actually have gardening tips for each month of the year.
Okay.
So they have this out, and there's a video associated with it too.
And lists and tables and all of that, graphs and whatever you want to. That's makes it much more interactive.
More stuff than we're going to get into.
Okay.
It just kind of has a blanket of everything. But I wanted to talk more about the gardening stuff. And they go into more tree diseases and stuff and why you do things. But so number one was consider adding a season extender, like a low tunnel or high tunnel to your thing. What do you think about that?
What would be the purpose of a season extender for your vegetables? Is that kind of what you're...
Yes. Yeah. To fight against the frost.
Yeah.
So an early frost that you still, maybe you haven't harvested everything yet, your tomatoes, you still have stuff out there that are very susceptible to frost. You could use this, you cover it with plastic or like a low tunnel, which is kind of like a little tunnel, plastic.
Little hoop tunnel or something.
Yeah.
Mini greenhouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can't do that, then plastic bags work similarly. But this is more for into November, like fight all those frosts for the early frost. So what do you think?
I like it. If you've got the time and a little bit of extra money and energy to put into that, I think it's a great plan. If you're a super avid gardener, let's just say you have a tomato plant that is just loaded with big, huge green tomatoes, and you want to just simply get them a little bit further along, developed and mature and whatnot. It's a great idea.
We went through something just barely. Was it last weekend?
We had a frost.
We had a pretty hard frost.
Gnarly, yeah.
So if you did this, you would be able to salvage some of those more tender vegetables, give you extra time to harvest them, because it just came on so fast.
Yeah.
And everybody was like trying to blow out all their sprinkler lines all at the same time. And I talked to Freddie, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we're just going nuts, blowing out sprinklers and stuff." They couldn't keep
I saw
up.
the lawn butlers blowing out sprinkler systems from the hospital down where I'm at, but...
Yeah, so it can sneak up on you. So this would be a way to kind of combat that. Another one I got on here is planting garlic. So if you were interested in planting garlic, now is the time. Mid-October to early November. And it's a very easy process. You can find these at any garden center.
Okay.
You can actually get away with maybe using one from the store. But
that was the question.
Sometimes they spray them with something that prevents them from growing.
Sprouting, right?
Sprouting, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And it might not be... There's certain garlic that are better for our temperatures. So that could be in the store, like if you just went to the grocery store. Mm-hmm. That garlic might not work in our climate because it gets too cold or it's too wet or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that it's, that plant is more or less a biennial? Because really, if you plant it now, it'll be nice and fresh and ready and sprouted, next year?
Yeah, yeah. So how you do it, you take the whole clove. It's like a mama clove, and you break it apart. And you plant them like bulbs.
Okay.
From what the videos I saw, and it was just very similar to like tulips and daffodils.
So I'm curious, when you harvest the garlic, kind of super side note, but are those garlic bulbs up on the plant, or do you dig them out of the ground?
Yeah, you dig them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the tuber.
Yeah. Oh, I'm thinking of shallots. Shallots, you harvest the little tiny nutlet bulb up in the flower portion of when the flower is senesced. You end up with your little shallots.
No, I've never done shallots.
It's almost like a hybrid mix between an onion and a garlic bulb. Super delicious. But anyway,
I could be wrong.
Shallots, yeah.
Many little bulbs connected together.
Yeah.
And you break it apart.
Yeah. So now's the time.
Now's the time.
Okay.
Yep.
October.
All right. So if you wanted to have your own grown fresh garlic, there you go. Do it now.
Okay.
So the next one is, if you have your garden, you want to rototill your leaves and compost and manure, turn it over, get that stuff into the soil for next spring. It'll enhance your microbial growth and get it active and stuff like that. So now's the time to do that.
To rototill the leaves. And now, by saying that, I mean there's a lot of experienced rototillers, people out there.
Yeah.
And obviously you would not want to use that in very wet, sticky situations. It'll just jack up your tines. It'll clog them up. It's not good for the soil structure. When the soil's wet and it gets disturbed like that, has a tendency to stick together unnaturally, maybe even slight compaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like what we used to do when we worked at Marinda. I mean, here it's talking about doing it for your vegetable garden, but we would do this basically for our flower beds.
Oh, yeah, pre-bulb planting. Yeah, exactly.
And we would add extra nutrients. We would add compost. We would add, we'd add so much stuff.
Yeah.
We'd add
gypsum
and
sulfur.
Sulfur.
Yeah.
And then we would do like a multi-nitrogen, just a regular kind of fertilizer.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we would do peat moss if we had it.
Mm-hmm. It is a good time to add that in. Some may say, well, why would I add fertilizer to my soil when we're going into the winter? Wouldn't that be a waste? And actually, it charges the soil because there are these negative, positive ion deals going on. But it also helps feed the microbes, the bacteria, that then help break down your leaf material and sticks and branches and all of that detritus type stuff. It helps break it down to the micronutrient level, which is then available for your plants the following year.
So if you didn't do that, you would starve your plants out because the microbials would take all the nitrogen.
Yeah, starve them out. The plants go yellow. People go, what's going on? They're anemic, this, that, and the other. And they just simply don't perform as well.
All right, so the next one, we got limit rose pruning. I thought this one was kind of interesting because I prune roses all the time. Mm-hmm. All throughout the year. So it said limit rose pruning to the extremely long canes to prevent snow load breakage. That seems
totally fair. Yeah,
that's good.
Mm-hmm.
A side note of that one is when you have an evergreen that people wrap with a burlap. It's the same thing. It's a snow load preventer breakage thing. I'd seen it before. And I thought, that's kind of weird. They're trying to keep their plants warm. Or what? I didn't know exactly what it was.
Put a little coat on there.
But it's really just to make it so it doesn't. I mean, if you think about arborvitaes, they'll just split open if the snow is too low. So you just do that to tie it together.
Yeah, that's
to prevent it. That's
an
important
idea. So you would wrap it in burlap just with a bit of overlap per layer. to keep it nice and tight. And then maybe just use some twine, some sisal, some hemp, something like that to wrap it all up and call it good. Yeah. I know what's kind of cool. What comes to mind actually when you brought that up was at Red Butte Garden and Arboretum. That's what the horticulture staff would do to the junipers and arborvitae that were susceptible to that type of snow load breakage. Usually it was done pre-Halloween trick-or-treat. I mean, we went through and just kind of wrapped these things up almost like they were these sentinels that kind of like drooped over a little bit on the top, and at nighttime with light shining in such a fashion that it looked a little bit scary, maybe. Oh. Created a bit of an ambiance. So, you can make a statement with wrapping these things up and make it look good. And
well, since we're on trees, the other thing you can do, garden tip, is to protect young trees trunks, by wrapping them with some, here it said for wrapping them with some white reflective tree wrap. Mm-hmm. And why we use white? To make it so it's not hot. Mm-hmm. The idea of this is temperature changing.
Yes.
So if I was wondering what you would think about this, but I use burlap for this. I've seen black tubing that they've like sliced the tubing and put it around it. I don't think that is going to help because you're actually making it
maybe worse. You're basically heating up the trunk on usually the south or the west side or angle. It's not tricking the tree necessarily into wanting to grow, but rather the temperature will heat up that trunk and the cambium, right? Yes. Just underneath the thin layered bark, get the cells to be more fluid. And then if you have a really sharp temperature drop, it can burst those little cells, those little cambium and trunk cells. It destroys. Usually, that's why you see that southwestern exposure damage on fruit trees. Really, I've seen a lot on fruit trees or right. Even ornamental fruit trees.
Anything that seems to have more of a thinner bark mm-hmm. is what I usually see it with. So any of the kind of pitted, like cherries and plums, and then you have the varieties that are not fruiting ones that we see more ornamentally that are flowering flowering plums, uh-huh. or the cherries, the flowering cherries. You see it a lot with those.
One a tree that just came to mind usually has that problem. European mountain ash, thin bark, and is very susceptible to that winter scorch or damage to the trunk. So that's a good call. Wrap it up. Wrap your trunks up. Just a side note to that real quick. It's always good to make sure that you unwrap that and take it off in the spring, early spring, because bugs like to find their way and burrow in and next to the trunk and next to that wrap. Maybe it's warm. Maybe it's just kind of a dark little hiding spot. If the bugs get in there and they happen to be the type that are boring, mm-hmm. It could cause problems. So it's one problem on top of another.
Yeah, but you do see it in orchards a lot.
Uh-huh.
Is that they just paint it, though. They don't wrap it. They don't take the time to wrap it, but it's only on that one side, the southern exposure side, and whoop, paint it white, mm-hmm. and they're good to go.
Protects it, yeah.
Protect your trees. So cutting back ornamental grasses. So this one is saying to do it in areas where there is a higher snow load probability. So I'd say like next to driveways or sidewalks, somewhere where there's going to be a heavier load, to cut those grasses back down. But in the areas that it doesn't have that, you leave it for the winter so you have more of a vertical winter interest.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. There's different types of grasses too. Some that are simply much more floppy, so it doesn't take much winter weather to flatten them out. One thing I've noticed some businesses doing with their ornamental grasses is they're not cutting them all the way to the ground like we did at Marinda, but rather would cut them halfway. It's kind of like a shrub that's been hedged. or has been pruned. Some people like it, some people don't. But I think what it shows is that somebody is tidying up that area, like somebody is taking care of that area. So, and we're talking about that grass being cut halfway, right? So it's the blades are much stronger and can hold up with weight. And it looks clean and everything else like that. So good recommendation, either leave it if you can, if you're not living in Park City, or simply trim it down halfway. It also helps protect the crown of that grass.
To not go so low or to leave it all the way?
To leave it all the way or leave it halfway protects the crown of the grass from frost damage. That's my plug for it.
Yeah, I'm pretty cool either way. Like, I don't have a problem with it if people do cut it halfway or all the way down, but I do see the winter interest. But usually it only lasts 1 or 2 storms because then it does flop and it gets buried. And I could see too, leading up to fall, you could have it give some sort of shelter or food for the birds or critters or whatever you want to have around. So that's just an added benefit for the environment. Leave those puppies up.
Yeah, good call.
Let's see here. Oh, planting spring bulbs. This is the time. Doing your change outs, putting in your tulips and daffodils and all those bulbs.
By the way, are you planting any this year?
No, I have some in there already. I'm just leaving them, seeing how they go. I only have some allium and some daffodils. They did pretty good for me last year. We'll see. I know they don't do as well as the next year. You should always add to.
You can try to naturalize, and the flower will be a little bit smaller or whatever.
Right.
But still, cool idea. Do you have a problem with deer?
We go on walks and we'll see them. We still have kind of fields around us, so they're kind of hiding out in the fields. I've never seen them in my yard, but they don't like the ones I planted.
Yeah, that's right.
So if I planted tulips, I'd probably see them.
Yeah. So if you want deer, if you want visitors, winter visitors, by all means, plant tulips.
Plant tulips. And then you could also add with those at the same time, you could plant cold hardy plants such as your pansies, primrose, ornamental cabbage. And what else do you think? What do you got in there? I guess that's kind of ornamental cabbage.
English daisies.
Another
one.
But as you're planting those, you might as well take out your ones that aren't going to make it. So it would be like your petunias and geraniums. I have one geranium. You could try to save it.
Yeah, absolutely, you could. As a houseplant.
As a houseplant,
yeah.
I'm not going to. But you could also, since you could save that geranium, but you could also dig out your tender perennials, such as your gladiolas, your dahlias, begonias. Have you ever tried to dig out a begonia? I wouldn't do that. Whatever. And canna lilies. So anything that kind of has that big bulb tuber thing.
Yeah.
Pull it out. And
what do you think about the sweet potato vine? Usually when we dug those up in Marinda, they would have those massive tuber dudes that could be stored, I'm sure. You could store it like a potato. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you just plant it next year.
That is for the avid gardener.
Yeah.
It takes some effort and work to pack that stuff away in the proper way, right? So that it doesn't desiccate, dry up, and then just be worthless.
So it did say, as a tip with these, if you do plan on digging up your tender perennials, is to let them die back down into the tuber.
Okay.
And then you get them. And I actually had success with the dahlias this last year. So I bought some little dahlias from a local nursery. I was just going to dig them up and throw them away, and I thought, why not try? And I did it wrong the first time with this group. I didn't do it wrong for very long. I think it kind of slowed their awakening in the spring. But I had packed it in just their soil, and that was wrong because they tried to grow. And I had it put away in the dark.
That's important, right?
Yeah.
You put it in the dark, yeah.
And it was growing, and I'm like, this is not working. So I took it out of the soil. I put it in, I can't even remember if I had it in peat moss or if it was just like
Vermiculite,
potting mix. It might have been
okay.
potting mix. That's
Yeah.
what I had in. And I took it out of that and put it just with wood chips.
Mm-hmm.
And put it in a pot, put it with the wood chips, and I kept every once in a while, once a month, every 2 weeks, I had a piece of paper towel. I had a paper towel, and I would wet it and put it under the pot and put the pot on top of my little wetted towel, so it kind of kept moisture around it, but not
on it.
On it.
Yeah, got it. Keep it humid, well drained.
Yeah.
But yeah, wood chips. That's a great idea.
It totally worked.
Yeah.
And then I planted them, and I got dahlias the next year around.
Yeah.
So if
Cool.
we didn't have such a hard frost, then we wouldn't have to do that. But
So real quick, do you dig them up and then you let the stem die back, or do you let them die back and then you dig them up
so it said for this to let them die back down
to
into
the ground?
it.
Okay.
But I didn't really work this year because the hard frost just killed the top, just totally just decimated it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they're still good after that one frost. So I haven't taken it out yet. But with that one, I was actually doing kind of like a little change out. So I was taking out all my annuals, and it was still looking good, and I just cut it off and took them and was like, well, I got them. Let's try them.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. But
Try it again.
it did it enough. It wasn't very hard. I was surprised how easy it worked. Here's another tip. If you have raspberries, now is the time to prune back all the raspberry canes that have fruited. So I do know that there's two kinds of raspberries, everbearing and the other one.
Okay.
So I think this is talking about the everbearing.
Yeah, even if I would say that's a good practice to do on either variety, either type. You can't go wrong. So it sounds to me like it will fruit old growth.
So you don't want to prune it all the way down.
So you're taking out the old canes that have already fruited. Okay.
And then it might push up some new ones for
Yep.
the next year.
And as you know, raspberries are, I don't want to say invasive, but they can be. So they will most definitely put out new canes.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So this one I thought was interesting. So this is from the website, and I don't know if I would do this, but it says, for your last mow of the season, you're mowing your lawn for the last time, trying to put this baby to bed, the water's off, whatever, you're not watering it anymore. Well, you might have to water it. Oh, it says quick release, so maybe it's not being watered in. Okay, so last mow, you mow 1 inch to 1.5 inches high.
Okay.
Not from what it was, but you're saying 1 inch and 1.5 inches high.
Which is short
So
in
short.
comparison to what we usually run it at. Yeah.
3 to 3.5, 4.
Mm-hmm.
To make it easier for the lawn to deal with drought.
Yeah.
Because the longer the blades are, the longer the deeper the roots will go.
And that's how you run it through the season. But what we're looking at here is last mow, maybe second to last mow too, because really you don't want to just go in and take out your 3.5 inch blade and drop it to 1 inch. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
that's going to throw some serious shock into things.
Have you heard of this before? Have you
No,
ever
but
done
I do this anyway.
Oh,
Not really even knowing why. It just
looks
looks better. Yeah.
Yeah.
When it's super short in the winter, it doesn't flop over. It doesn't mat. And it reduces thatch possibly.
you know that's what it says. It minimizes disease
Oh, okay, yeah.
issues when it's this short. So I could
Oh, yeah,
see that.
snow mold and whatnot that you get. Yeah, I get that. Cool.
And then it says to apply a quick release fertilizer after last mow for early spring green up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
A liquid, basically, isn't it?
No.
You could use a quick release that's a pellet.
Yeah.
So then you have the pellets there, but I mean, we've already turned off the water. You don't water it
Yeah.
in.
No, but
just
typically
let the
you'll have
snow-
like the rain and the snow come in and it just
Percolates.
exactly, yeah, percolates. But a quick release,
It says quick release.
yeah, and that would be like a urea, sulfuric.
We wouldn't do that at Marinda, though. Fertilize it at the end of the year with a.
No, I don't recall.
I don't remember doing that either.
Mm-mm.
So, well, they're getting it from somewhere, and they're smarter than us.
I say try it.
Yeah.
Test it out. What the heck?
Yeah.
$20 later.
Might be worth it.
Good to go. Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. Thanks, Brad.
All right. Thanks, Blaine.
Yep. Bye.
Later.
All right. Well, there we go. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. I want to thank Brad for coming and doing this podcast with me. I want to thank you, the listeners, the podlings out there, wherever you are. Thank you so much for listening. We're really trying to focus on our YouTube. If you really like the podcast, you can come on there and see our live videos. Try to do a live stream of the podcast once a week when we get together. Sometimes we just put out older podcasts that we have recorded. And if you can come on there, you can participate, or you can at least send us an email, send us a note, something like that, comment if you like it, share with people. Thank you so much for listening, and remember to plant on, Babylon.